Welcome to CAMO Top 10, your source for all of the top-ranked fighters in the California Amateur Mixed Martial Arts Organization. Now, if you've ever wondered how CAMO gets their rankings, they use what's called the Combat Intelli-Rating and Ranking System. It's a program that takes all the statistics from the fights that happen throughout California and compiles a list of the top-ranked fighters in each weight class. I'm your host, Dawna Gonzales, and joining me today, as always, by my friend and matchmaker at U of MMA, Jay Tan. And today we are here at Tapout LA in downtown Los Angeles with professional fighter, manager, and general manager of Tapout LA, Brandt Stebbins. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
Later on in the show, we'll also be joined by lethal Laura Salazar, and we have a fight for you to check out. But first, we're going to look at our heavyweights. New to our list this month at number 6 is Robert Johnson. He's 4-2-0 and he fights out of Sacramento. Jay?
Yeah. Robert Johnson, aka Ruthless as he likes to be called, started training in 2010. He's a self-proclaimed bar brawler and street fighter. He had a little bit of wrestling in high school and took all of that, and after high school found an MMA gym and really combined all of that to fine-tune his skills and direct his path towards MMA. He went all the way to the finals in the CAMO State Tournament in 2010, and then in 2011 and 12 fought in Nevada, trained out of there a little bit as well. He's come back in 2013 more locally, and for his efforts got championship gold in October at Stand Up Fighters in Northern California.
Congratulations to him, that's great. Now, Brandt, you came up in the Vale Tudo circuit, so it seems like brawling might be a little bit more familiar to you. How do you think that guys who brawl do in the cage, fare in the cage?
Well, if you look back in the early days of the UFC, there was a lot of brawlers, most notably Tank Abbott, who as well came from a wrestling background and notorious throughout Huntington Beach for street fighting and brawling, and there's numerous and maybe millions of stories about him. And, you know, I think that it brings a little bit of an organic feeling, a little bit more of a toughness inside of a guy that maybe doesn't get that inside of a gym. It's something that they're grown into, something that organically happens. And I think maybe it can give them a little bit of an edge, maybe especially in those later rounds.
Interesting perspective, thank you. We're going to move on to our cruiserweights now. New at the number 2 spot is 18-year-old Will Smith with a record of 2-0 fighting out of Dublin.
Yeah. Will Smith is one of these new kids, the new generation of MMA fighters who grew up watching the sport. It always existed in their lives. And so Will started training BJJ under Ralph Gracie in 2004 when he was 14 years old. During all of that time, he's solely focused and honed his life in on an MMA career. His parents are incredibly supportive of him. He's got a girlfriend that even trains with him and also rotates his work schedule around his training. He bounces on the weekend. He's a personal trainer. I expect big things to see in his career in the future.
You know, that's interesting. He has been training since he was 14, and he's looking to go pro with only a record of about 3 or 4 fights underneath his belt. As a coach and manager, when do you feel the appropriate time to take a fighter professional is?
I feel that really it's going to come down to your techniques and your skill set. There's a lot of fighters that are out there right now in the amateur league that have 10 fights that I don't feel that could go pro. Reason being is, yes, they might be taking out some amateurs, but they're not really taking out somebody that really is ready to go pro themselves. And at that point, you really have to assess, can we put them in a pro? Can we take them in sparring, and how will they handle themselves against a pro? Can they be safe? To me, that's the number one importance. Can they actually be safe against a pro fighter and be okay in the cage and get out with being unscathed?
Thank you. It's always good to hear a coach's perspective on that. Moving on to our light heavyweight category. Moving up 2 spots to gain the number 1 is Vincent Bordy. He has a record of 10-1, and we just learned at the time of this production that he took home the 205 belt at the state championships. He fights out of Manteca. Jay?
Vince Bordy, Vince the Wild Bordy, college and high school wrestler. He wrestled at San Francisco State on a scholarship, no less, and wanted after school, after college, to continue his competitive drive. So he got into MMA. He's a purple belt right now. I believe has 2 blue belts under Charles Gracie and Sal Ribeiro, I believe. 10-1, you know, what I liked about him when we spoke was that right now he's also getting his graduate degree in education. He's working on his plan B for his life while he's established himself as a credible CAMO fighter, state champion, you know, and 10-1 record is not too shabby. So he's got some time to work on a plan B. The idea for him apparently is that to work as a teacher, and then that opens up his time to focus on continuing his training to go to the next level as a pro.
You know, 10-1 is a really impressive record, but there is that one loss. Now, as a fighter, how do you deal with a loss?
There's a couple of different ways you can deal with a loss. Generally, most fighters go through 2 different things. One, they kind of back out of the loss. They take weeks off of training. They don't want to come back. Their ego is broken. They feel like they let their friends and family down and anybody that bought a ticket, and emotionally go through these difficult things. Then you have other fighters that next day, they're back in the gym going, watching the tape. How did I lose? What did I do wrong? And they just train and train more and more, and it puts a little bit of a fire under them that maybe they didn't have before. But also, you know, we found out that his one loss was actually from a TKO, which was due to a cut. As a fighter such as myself, I don't necessarily consider a cut a loss. However, he did. And, you know, he actually said that he's going to come back stronger and took that loss very personal and decided to come back and train more on his stand-up. And to me, I think that's very commendable. He is one of those fighters that the next day, doesn't matter how beat up, how hurt, how bad the ego is, he's back in there training 10 times harder. And for that, you know, I can see why he's champion.
Absolutely. It really displays that not only is his mental toughness, but his emotional maturity. And he's got the whole teacher thing going on. He sounds a lot like a fighter that we're probably all fans of. Who does he remind you of?
Of course, former UFC champion Rich Franklin, who also was established as a teacher before his fight career took off, and didn't do too shabby for him. So
not at all.
Again, I think there's a lot of promise for the Wild Bordy.
Thanks a lot. We're going to move on to our welterweights now. New to the top 10 this month, at spot number 8 is Robert Payne. He has a record of 5-1-0, and he fights out of Han-Mi Taekwondo in Marysville, California. Jay?
Yeah. The House of Pain is in effect, as Everlast once said on one of his albums, and in this case, it is legitimately true. Robert Payne walked into Han-Mi Taekwondo at the age of 8, and he has trained there ever since then. That's over 20 years, and the studio itself has been there for 30. He now runs that studio as the head instructor there. Ironically, his instructor was a big believer in cross-training of styles. And so Robert himself, he wrestled in high school, did a little bit of kickboxing after high school, but it wasn't until one of his students in his own classes introduced him to the amateur MMA scene that he decided to enter into the amateur MMA scene and compete himself. Since then, he's continued his cross-training. He works with longtime sparring partners and his instructor, and has gone 5-1, as you said. A lot of success there.
Sounds like a guy we need to watch out for. Mm-hmm. His story leads me to a question that I want to ask Brandt. Now, what do you do with a fighter who comes in and has a really strong background in one particular martial art, but really nothing in the rest of the martial arts that you need in MMA? How do you help them hone their craft?
What we try to do is we try to take the best we can that's utilized for MMA, such as at Taekwondo. They're going to have some great kicks. They're going to have some great movement. So we're going to teach them what we want to do to kind of hit him ready, safe for ground. He might not have any ground, so we're going to teach for his movement to be able to move, but also be able to sprawl, which somebody in a Taekwondo world wouldn't be really learning to sprawl. So we're going to do those such things. Or we have a wrestler who comes in and shoots. Most wrestlers are not going to be worrying about a knee coming up the middle when they shoot. So, you know, we kind of prepare them for that and tell them where to put their heads. Or boxers, for example, when they're very feet heavy or front heavy on the front leg, and they're going against a Muay Thai guy and he comes and, you know, kicks out the front leg. So we really try to take the best we can from those styles and let them use what they have. But tweak it for, you know, the style of MMA.
Absolutely, sounds good. Hey, speaking of all the different mixed martial arts that are out there, Robert has a brown belt in a really kind of obscure martial art.
Diestro Eskrima, excuse me. I believe for the most part it's a bit of a weapons-based sport. So obviously you're not going to use that in MMA. But he says that it really has helped him improve his hand speed. So there's something to that.
Never hurts to be fast. Moving on to our middleweights now. New to the #1 spot is Mario Delgado with a record of 8-3-0 fighting out of Team Punishment in Torrance. Now, Jay, Mario has a story that we don't hear a lot in the amateurs.
Very true. In 2012, Mario fought 6 times. Of those matches, 5 of those matches were only against 2 different opponents, which means that he fought one of them 3 times and another one 2 times. You don't see rematches very often in the amateur ranks, and it just happened to work out that way. For his efforts, though, he is a middleweight champion with Get Down Promotions in Santa Ana and with Knockout Promotions run by Antonio McKee, who is one of his early coaches.
Interesting. Now, there's a lot of argument for pros and cons for amateurs taking rematches. As a manager, what would motivate you to let your amateur fighter take a rematch?
Well, you know, amateurs don't really get paid, but they are able to now sell tickets to acquire some funds. What some people don't realize is that these amateurs actually have a lot of fees that they have to take care of to fight, such as their licensing fees and their medicals, and these fees do add up. And some of these guys are kids, and they're struggling to make these fees. So, you know, if I have a promotion come to me, if Jay comes to me and says, you know, I'd like for a rematch to really happen, you know, at that point, I would have to sit down with my fighter and say, hey, listen, you know, is it going to be really worth it? Do you really, number one, do you really want the rematch? Number two, how can we use this rematch to our benefit? Not the promoter's benefit, but our benefit. Because we know that they're going to sell more tickets, but what are we going to get out of it? What are we going to get out of it as a fighter, and what are we going to get out of it financially? Because realistically, when you do become a pro, it is a business. So we kind of look at it as marketability. Can we sell more tickets? How many tickets did we sell last time? Are we really going to sell more tickets to more fans, more friends and family if we do take this rematch? And if so, how much of the ticket sales are the promoters going to give us? And is there a way we can work out a deal with the promoter saying we'll accept this rematch? However, instead of maybe $15 per ticket, this time we want $20. I think it gives you a little bargaining power. And it's also, I think it's great for amateurs to kind of figure that out and start working into that, because that's something they're going to have to deal with when they're a pro.
Absolutely, learning the business of MMA. Now, for the sake of educating the amateur fighters out there, same question. As a matchmaker, what is going to motivate you to set up a rematch?
You know, ironically, I'm going to surprisingly agree with you to an extent. For the most part, I'd rather avoid a rematch if I can, unless it's super close. If you've got a good split decision, or both fighters feel like they could go again and they really want to do it. To me, I'd like diversity of opponents when it comes to booking amateur fighters, just because that's when you should be getting as much experience with different styles and different types of fighters as possible. Now, speaking to the economics of the whole thing, you do have, the rematch is one of those few storyline angles that comes to you. When it does come to you, that's something that a promoter can build off of. And it is absolutely important for the gym or the fight team and the promoter to have a good partnership and for everybody to benefit from it as an experience as well as financially as best as possible. When you talk about ticket sales, you know, and this is a storyline that we can all build off of, absolutely, that's great. And there should be an agreement or a partnership financially with the gym regardless of whether it's a rematch or not. If it is that rematch, if there's that opportunity, then sure, we all blow it up and promote that storyline. But otherwise, if not everybody is on board with the whole idea, move ahead, They'll possibly face each other again in the pros anyway, and that's when they really get paid for a rematch.
Or maybe even in the CAMO finals, in the tournaments.
Absolutely, yeah. That's another thing altogether. I mean, that's something that the matchmakers ourselves don't do as much as CAMO decides who's in the tournament and who advances. So
guys that maybe not want a rematch might find themselves rematching regardless because of the tournament.
And if it's for a CAMO belt, then they're going to agree to it anyway.
Exactly.
Take the fight. All really good information to have. We're going to take a break from our rankings right now and thank our underwriters, and then we're going to talk to Brandt about Tapout LA. CAMO Top 10 would like to thank the following underwriters: University of Mixed Martial Arts, Sniper Fightwear, Body by Vesalius, take the 90-day challenge, JTMedia Productions, and to Tapout LA for hosting our show today. Filming at Tapout LA is special to me. It's my home gym. I train at 10th Planet and with the other trainers here. We don't just train fighters here. There's a lot of other things going on at Tapout. Why don't you share with everybody how Tapout is reaching out to the community?
Well, we're here in downtown Los Angeles, and in Los Angeles, there is a very big problem with gangs here, especially right up the street from South Central. And we actually deal a lot with kids that are just wandering these streets, that are getting into trouble, that are fighting on the streets, that are fighting for all the wrong reasons. At Tapout, and as you know, we've been going into these neighborhoods, such as South Central, into the Florence Firestone district, Jordan Downs projects, Grape Street projects, and we've been working with a company that's a gang intervention company called Inner City Visions. They are a division off of A Better LA, which is another organization that's ran by Pete Carroll. And what they do is they go in and they help these kids with safe passages on getting home, or kids that are having problems with gang violence or getting brought into that lifestyle. And what we've learned, and we kind of was organically done, we weren't out just to go and do this. One day, the gentleman from Inner City Visions, whose name is Alfred, he's an ex-gang member, spent a lot of time in prison for his actions, and came out and changed his life. And one day he said, hey, I have these kids in South Central High School that really I think would be great if you guys can maybe come and talk to them about how martial arts help save you. Alfred learned that I come from a very rough childhood, and that some of our fighters here have come from the same kind of childhood. So we go out into this high school, and we weren't really sure what to say. We weren't sure how to approach the kids or anything. But we kind of just started talking and sharing our stories and what I went through, and some of our trainers went through, and some of our fighters that are here now went through. And we've all kind of dealt with different situations, but all were very similar. During this, we started getting the kids kind of still turning their backs to us, crossing their arms, not really listening, kind of being like the kids you would see in the movies, in the really bad high schools. They're just turning their back. They don't care who you are, what you're going to say. Eventually, me and the coach and some of the fighters, we started joking about beating each other up, and how every day we show up to the gym and I'd be like, oh, I beat you up the other day. And like, oh, but I tapped you out the other day. And all of a sudden, the kids kind of started laughing a little bit, and they kind of liked it. So we're like, okay, well, instantly, just in our heads, we kind of kept playing with it. And the more and more we went on about it, we were talking about beating each other up, and every day that we fight each other. And I even asked the kids, I said, I have one of the greatest jobs in the world. I get to show up at work and go and beat up somebody, and then go home and just feel great. And some of the kids were like, wow, these guys are kind of crazy. And they liked it. Then, I said, now let me ask you a question. And I started getting them kind of interacting. And I said, let me ask you a question. Picture the baddest person in your gang, your neighborhood, the strongest guy, the guy that everybody's afraid of, the ones that you guys are trying to get up to. Now, put him in a cage, let's say against Anderson Silva. Now, who's going to win? Is your guy going to win, or is Anderson Silva win? Do me a favor. Do me a favor. Raise your hand if you think Anderson Silva will win. Every kid's hand gets raised.
Right.
I said, exactly. I said, so why are all you guys out here on the streets trying to be that guy when realistically nobody knows who that guy is? I know who started the Bloods. I know who started the Crips. I know their names. But I can guarantee you most of the world doesn't. But majority of the world does know who Anderson Silva is. And they consider that the baddest man on the planet. So when I kind of did that, the kids started realizing, wow, he's right. You know, we are trying to look up to this guy, but he is not the baddest guy. You know, and I also brought to him, you know, you guys are out here beating the kids up on the street, kids that don't train, that don't know fighting, that don't train fighting. I dare any of you to come up into my gym and try to take out one of my fighters with just your street fighting skills. It's not gonna happen because our guys are trained, they're trained for this every single day. So if you wanna be this tough guy, you wanna be the man on the block, the man on the neighborhood, the man of the world, the platform is inside of a cage, not a street corner.
We all know that the road to MMA can lead you out of a lot of bad places. Now, we don't want to just keep this here at Tapout LA. We want to reach out to the MMA community. How could somebody who trains at another gym but really wants to be involved in this program contact you to lend their time to maybe help train these kids or help be a good role model to these kids?
You know, wouldn't even say just contact me. I would say contact your local person, your local community leaders. Contact the person that's helping with gang prevention. Whoever's in your community, reach out to your community leaders. You know, martial arts has been a very big discipline for kids coming up. And it's really helped turn kids' lives around. And it's changed a lot of lives. If you go back into a lot of these stories of these fighters, these current fighters today, they really do come back from bad childhoods. I was just with Cub Swanson recently, who told me about his story growing up in gangs and all the bad stuff that he was going through. And that if it wasn't for MMA, that he would be either dead or in prison today. And I mean, to the point where he was cracking in his throat when he was talking to me because he was so emotional. And he gives everything to MMA to save his life and still does today. So we can all do our part. You just have to reach out to the community, do your research, and find those kids.
Absolutely, and you know, Cub's story is one that we've heard many times in MMA. Mm-hmm. So I think the moral here is to reach out to your community and use the skills that you're learning in this wonderful sport to help others and maybe help take them out of a bad place that they might not want to be in. Jay, you have anything you want to add?
I just think one thing that's really special about MMA is it especially lends itself to this. To directing kids, you know, down a right path, for lack of a better phrase, you know, because it's not just, whereas boxing, for example, not to compare the two, that's not my argument, but boxing is one style. MMA, you've got different styles and different influences, different mentalities, like traditional martial arts, as we've been talking about, wrestling. You know, wrestling is very much kind of in the heartland of America is where it thrives. And you have these different mentalities and perspectives that are predominant in those different styles. MMA is where it all comes together and where you take a little bit from here, a little bit from here, not just the style, but the mentality, the training. What does it take to be an MMA fighter, that athlete? And I think having that kind of diversity can speak to these kids that are not all just cookie cutter hardcore kids from the street with a bad upbringing. Some of them will understand the wrestling mentality more. Some of them will take to the honor and discipline and formality of traditional martial arts. And you know, at the end of the day, also, it's in a cage, and kids love to get their bang on and get it out in the cage. It's kind of that nice. It's the right setting.
Absolutely.
For a guy to feel like he's going beyond himself.
Also, I think we can all attest to the fact that there is no way you can be in a bad mood after an hour of hitting, punching, or trying to choke somebody out.
Absolutely right. I know.
Best thing that ever happened to me. I'm sorry, please.
Also, another great thing that we have here at Tapout is we actually have some Bloods. We have some Crips. We have some MS-13. We have all these different gang members that are training here today. Some of them we sponsor. Some of them we give them free training as long as they're doing what they're supposed to be doing.
And they come in and it's safe and friendly for them to be here.
And now these guys, I've had talks with them where they come here and they train against each other, and at the end they're kind of joking like, oh man, you got me, or I got you. But when they leave the door, when they walk outside on these streets in LA, they don't talk to each other. When they separate, when they walk out, they won't get caught dead talking to each other or giving each other a five outside these doors because they will get killed for it. And that's something that a lot of people don't know, is that that will happen. But in here, they actually can give each other a hug. They beat the hell out of each other, and you know what? They're alive afterwards.
Absolutely.
And
You'll never
that's
love somebody as
huge.
much as you do when you get into a cage and beat the crap out of them.
Exactly.
Right after we come back from our break, we're going to talk to lethal Laura Salazar. Ranked at number 7, we are joined by lethal Laura Salazar. With a record of 3-0, Laura, you're relatively new to MMA. At the age of 27, a couple years ago, you just decided to start training. What led you to the sport?
You know what? I was 2 years ago, just walking around 5'1", 180 pounds.
Wow.
Walking to the gym, I was tired of pretty much everything, depressed, all of that stuff. So I decided to make a change for myself, and I walked into UFC gym, and actually Jessica Pryor, the fighter, she was my personal trainer, actually.
Really?
Yes. So I worked with her, and then I took a Muay Thai class with Anthony Britton, and that's how I met him.
Okay.
He seen something in me and decided to kind of take it a little bit more, and I took some private classes with him. He pretty much introduced me to everything that I know. Everything in regards to martial arts, I learned it from him. So as a loyal person, that's the reason why he's in my corner. So, yeah.
That's a really interesting story.
You've got a far more interesting fight career, or should I say, you've packed a whole lot into a very short time.
Yes.
Your accomplishments in pancrase, you've actually toured, you're an international or world champion with
Yes.
pancrase, and from there you've segued into MMA pretty recently. Also, a decent record in Muay Thai, nothing
Yes.
to turn one's nose up at. When you look at all of this stuff, it's gone so fast. What do you take from it when you look back on a short but intense 2-year career here? What's been the biggest, most indelible lesson you've gotten out of it?
I think the main one that I kind of lacked before this was pretty much dedication and being able to start something and finish it. That was one of the things that still, to this day, kind of takes me on, not just in training, but in life itself. And that's that's the lesson that I learned.
I bet you didn't expect it to go this far, right?
Yeah, and as long as you actually put yourself to do something, your mind can do so much. Mm-hmm. And just being able to kind of just go from nothing to something, it's just very empowering. So.
Wow.
You speak about being very dedicated. As a fighter myself, and I'm a single father, we know that you're a single mother.
Yes.
And one of the struggles that I've always had was finding the time to be a single father and a fighter, and having that dedication, dedicating the time to training,
Yes.
but also finding the time to dedicate to your child.
Yes.
How do you find that time, and how do you deal with it?
Oh man, that's every day is a struggle for me. I get up 5:30 in the morning. I have to be at work at 5:30 in the morning every day. So 5:30 to 3, from 3 about till maybe 5 o'clock, that's my time with my daughter. That's when I kind of dedicate those couple of hours to do homework, to talk about school. Anything that we want to do, that's what we do. That's throughout the week. Weekends, I dedicate that to her. If I don't have a fight coming up or anything like that, you usually just go shopping, get our nails done, and that's where I kind of want to, and she knows what I do. She's very supportive, and when I say, hey baby, I got to go train, but I'll be back. She said, okay, bye mom, and we'll see. And luckily I have a very supportive family that watch her, and that helps me so much with that, so yeah.
Fantastic. Now, what can we expect from Lethal Laura in the future? I mean, in the last 2 years, you've really torn up the MMA circuit. So
Yeah.
what's next?
You know, a lot of people don't know, but it's within this year I pretty much had all my fights. My first tournament that I did was 3 months into my training. So, and then from there I got my my first Muay Thai amateur bout. But then ever since this year, I believe maybe February, that was my first match. Everything else has been happening this year. So, you know, I'm looking into teaching soon. So look out for that. Also looking into, you know, there's so many things, but I just play it as I go along, because you know, in this sport, you never know what's gonna happen. You can injure yourself. You can, you know, there's many things that can happen. So I just kind of, you know, play it by as I go along. So.
Well, we can't just wait to see what's going to happen next. We like to play a little game here at the U of MMA. We have 6 questions. Don't think about the answer. Just give it to us, whatever pops into your head.
Okay.
Whose job would you rather have, Dana White or Joe Rogan?
Dana White.
You can shift a weight class and fight any current champion in the UFC. Who do you fight?
Ronda.
What is your favorite moment in your MMA career so far?
Backhand spin to my last MMA at UMMA.
Nice. What's your go-to victory meal?
Pizza.
Nice. Would you rather defend an armbar from Ronda Rousey or a head kick from Lyoto Machida?
Ronda.
And would you rather win your fight by submission or knockout?
Knockout.
Thank you. When we come back, we're going to take a look at our lightweights. New to the number 3 spot with a record of 4-0 is Samuel Alvarez fighting out of Manteca, California.
That's right. Samuel Alvarez saw his first MMA match when he was in 8th grade. It happened to be Uriah Faber versus Jens Pulver, and he was pretty much addicted after that. He finished up school and has started training, I believe, with Cesar Gracie's camp. But he's relocated to Manteca and is with Felipe's gym, where he's a teammate with Vince Bordi, and also MVP is where he does his jiu-jitsu. He's gone 4-0 up until the CAMO tournament, which just happened recently, and fought for the title. Came up on the short end of victory, but I talked with him pretty recently, and it sounds like that hasn't deterred his drive at all.
Now, Samuel for a young fighter, he has a family and a full-time job, which a lot of guys don't have that obstacle to face in their training. How do you push a guy who has all of that going on in his personal life to train as much as he needs to train to take him to the next level as a fighter?
You know, as a coach, I like to sit my guys down, especially that have fights coming up, and go over their work schedules, go over their personal schedules before we go over their training schedule. If they do have a family and they do have a young one to take care of, that's very important as well, because, you know, me as a single father, I believe one of my greatest powers comes from the love of my child. So I try to make sure that the fighters embrace that same thing, that, you know, they realize what they're fighting for. A lot of guys fight for their family. So I want them to come home and see their family and enjoy that time. So they realize that when they go to train, when they go to fight, you know, that's what they're doing it for. So, you know, it's difficult because at some points you do have to limit the time with their family. However, we do make sure that they do have enough quality time with the family. One, to not just disrupt the family home, but also for them to, you know, realize again why they're fighting and what they're fighting for.
Absolutely. Well-rounded extends to outside the cage.
Correct.
We're going to take a look at our featherweights now. Moving up 4 spots to number 5 is Edgar Duran. He has a record of 6-1 and fights out of San Clemente. Jay?
So Edgar Duran is one of the stars of World Combat Series, which is Gabe Scarpelli's promotion. They've done shows in, I believe, San Diego and Santa Ana. Not Santa Ana, excuse me, San Jose. And he's had quite a few matches there. Edgar recently fought for the CAMO Featherweight Championship title. Came up a little bit short, but inside info tells me that he may be lined up for a title match before too long with World Combat Series.
Now, Edgar was busy preparing for a state championship fight, so we didn't get a chance to talk to him before we taped today. And we haven't been able to find a lot of information about him online. Brandt, what do you think the pros and cons are of putting your fights up on the internet and then taking them off or not putting them up at all?
Yes, when I heard about Edgar, we were going to be talking about Edgar today. I went on YouTube and looked around a little bit and to see what I can find, even on Facebook, and wasn't able to find any of his fight videos. And that is one thing that, as coaches and fighters, we do talk about putting your fights online. Now, there's 2 things that could happen that are positive and negative. One of them being positive is that a pro promoter may be able to see your fights and it happened just to go viral. And everyone says, oh my God, you got to see this guy fight. He's amazing. Next thing you know, you have pro promoters calling you left and right and your career has just started and bloomed. Great. The other thing is it could be negative because now if you have your fight video out there, you have an opponent coming up and they're taking a look at all your fight videos and they're just studying everything that you do wrong. Now they're able to kind of study you and be able to implement their game plan by what your previous fights for. However, if you are a fighter that constantly progresses and that is constantly evolving in the sport, which our sport is constantly evolving, your opponents won't be able to necessarily study you too much if you are evolving from each different fight. So there is pros, there is cons. So realistically, it's something that you should sit down with your coach or your trainer and discuss. Where are we? Am I progressing enough to have my older videos out there? That really is not my style anymore. However, they are really great and people might really love to see them. It's one of those things where you kind of have to take a judgment.
It is a really personal decision. As a promoter and matchmaker, how do you weigh on it?
Well, it's the same thing in that the pros and cons of it. If I can't find videos of this guy, I'm going to be more wary of him because I don't know him. Any matchmaker should do as much due diligence research as possible and know their fighters. And if you can't find anything on the guy, number one, that means that he doesn't have that much of an online presence, which means that he may not really have that much of a following. I don't necessarily want that guy on my show. Now, on top of that, I don't want to look like an idiot when I pair the guy up and it turns out that he's something that he doesn't claim, or vice versa rather. You get what I'm saying. So in my opinion, I think it's just better in general to have your video out there, have a presence known. You have to, because again, your brand is yourself and nobody is going to be as concerned about that as you. And I mean in terms of promoting. So I think it's worth the cost of your potential opponent being able to research you. Because as Brandt said, you should be improving by leaps and bounds ahead. Your last match should not be where you're at. The next match will be where you're at. That's where
But also keep in mind, that is a promoter telling you that he is worried to see if you could sell tickets. So fighters, remember that one.
I do want those ticket sales. No denying that.
All very good points for fighters to consider. Edgar, we would still love to hear from you here at CAMO Top 10, so reach out to us, please. We are going to move on to our bantamweights now. At number 6, we have a fighter with a record of 8-4-1. Isaiah Gonzales, no relation to me, fighting out of San Jose. Jay, Isaiah has a really interesting perspective on his career in MMA.
Yeah. Isaiah Gonzales really gets the bigger picture. He's the son of a former boxer and did Taekwondo as a kid, but left martial arts and combat sports up until about age 24 when he found an MMA gym and joined it. Says that he loves MMA, but he prefers to stand and bang. He just sees that it's more fan-friendly. Audiences enjoy the rock'em sock'em robots, and so that's really his preferred style. That said, though, he's well-versed on the ground and feels comfortable there.
It's an interesting but really legitimate perspective that fans prefer the striking because it's more flashy, they understand it. Now, do you think the fan base is moving more towards the educated fan who understands what's going on in the grappling, or because MMA is getting bigger, the fan base are the people that just want to see the flash?
You know, I think that the common MMA fan is definitely evolving. Back in the earlier days, guys would hit the ground and they would boo. Nowadays, you're starting to hear more cheers when you see a transition. You're seeing a guy starting to set up for an armbar. People are starting to scream and yell for it. Where, you know, before the only thing people yell and scream for was a knee. I mean, how many times have we been to a fight and all you hear the common fans say, knees, all the time.
Right.
Right? But now you're starting to hear them, hey, armbar, triangle. You know, they're starting to evolve. But unfortunately, striking's still just kind of the seller over ground. And we kind of learned that not too long ago with Metamoris, which is one of the most prestigious jiu-jitsu competitions in the world.
Absolutely.
And had the top guys there. The production was phenomenal. But the seatings was just empty. It just didn't fill up as much as it should. And, you know, to me, that's sad. You know, I really do hope that the fan base does get more behind the jiu-jitsu and understands it a little bit more. You know, what I liked about Bellator, that they used to have the ring girls do the little different types of jiu-jitsu.
Sweet submissions.
Different
with Jimmy
submissions.
Smith.
Right. And you kind of learned them. And I think that was great because it actually started teaching a fan base a little bit more about jiu-jitsu. Because it's a little hard to understand jiu-jitsu if you've never done it. Or if you've never really just been shown what it's done. You can understand a guy getting knocked out. You can understand a guy getting kicked in the head. Not too hard to figure out. But if you start seeing a guy set up a Kimura, you have no idea what he's doing. You think he's just holding his hand off to the side.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think it's something where hopefully as time goes, and we are the fastest growing sport in the world, as time goes, I think that people will be more interested in it. And hopefully, you know, jiu-jitsu will get its credit more on the fan base.
Absolutely, and good for Isaiah for knowing exactly what type of fighter he is and what type of show he wants to put on. We're gonna look at our flyweights now. Moving up 2 spots to number 3 is Heinrich Wasmer. He has a record of 4-3, and he fights out of 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu and Fight Academy in Pasadena. Jay?
Heinrich Wasmer is one of these young, energetic, charismatic guys that you're going to hear a lot from in the very near future. He's been with Savant Young for quite a long time. He's instructing now there and holds the title belt, I believe, with Knockout Promotions. He's the guy, honestly, I've wanted to book him for the U of MMA for quite a long time, and it hasn't worked out for one reason or another, but hopefully in the future, Heinrich, get at me.
We definitely love to see him at the U because he is a 10th Planet guy, so you've had the opportunity to see him here at headquarters. What did you notice when he was training?
This kid right here has an unbelievable rubber guard. His ground game is amazing. He's got great transitions, great sweeps. He's definitely a world-class 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, as well as his stand-up with Servant is just amazing. Kid has great power, very agile, and just like they said, this kid, keep an eye out. He's going to be one bad man Majamo.
We're going to take one more look at all the rankings in the different weight classes.
Introducing first, fighting out of the blue corner, making her debut, she stands at 5 feet 10 inches tall and weighing at 125.8 pounds, representing Systems Training Center from Cincinnati, Ohio, Stephanie Pogue. And her opponent across the cage, fighting out of the red corner, a Muay Thai practitioner. She brings a perfect record to the cage with 2 wins and no losses. She stands at 5 feet 11 inches tall and weighing at 126.2 pounds. Fighting with Team Britain from Norwalk, California, lethal Laura Salazar. Man in charge of the action, Rafael Davis.
The cage closes here for our first women's bout of the evening. Stephanie Pogue in the blue corner, lethal Laura Salazar here in the red corner. And immediately, the height difference is apparent. The 5'10 Stephanie Pogue versus the 5'1 Laura Salazar.
Yeah, I like how she came out and started setting the pace, circling and working her jab immediately.
Stephanie said before the fight that using that length and that jab was going to be a big part of her stand-up game tonight.
Yeah, lethal Laura took it right to the ground and right in side control. But Stephanie Pogue, nice job getting her guard back smoothly.
Well, despite Laura's long Muay Thai and pancration background, she might have looked at that length of Stephanie and decided that she had a better chance here on the ground. But again, with someone long like that, look at Stephanie going all 10th Planet rubber guard style. Yeah, this can be just as dangerous.
Yeah, with the long legs, you know, you have a lot of options on the ground. You know, it looks like somewhat of a modified mission control she was going for. But now she's trying to work herself over for an armbar. She has it. If she pinches her knees together, it's not a bad attempt. She lost it.
That's a lot of weight being picked up there right now by lethal Laura Salazar.
Laura's safe right there. Her arm is past the elbow. You know, Stephanie would need to shoot her hips back up, but yeah, the armbar is gone on that. And they're back up to their feet.
You know, Laura looking a little sluggish on the feet tonight.
Yeah, and she needs to be moving a little bit more. Nice little right hand snuck in by Pogue.
I think that length of Pogue starting to frustrate Salazar a bit.
Yeah, I think she knows how to use her height pretty well. You know, I'm sure coming from a basketball background, she knows that height, you can have a lot of advantages if you use it correctly.
I'm really liking the straight punches coming from Stephanie right now.
Yeah, we have ourselves a few seconds left in the round. Tight little round, but I see Pogue landing some great little shots. You know, that's a tight little round. So far, pretty good fight we got going on in front of us. Hope you guys at home are enjoying this.
Pretty good action both ways. A little damage showing on the face of Stephanie Pogue. You gotta wonder though, you know, lethal Laura Salazar had a lot of energy in her last fight. Comes out a bit flat-footed here in the first round.
Yeah, it might be the height playing a factor, or, you know, maybe just, you know, maybe she had to cut some weight or improper diet. You know, you never know how the training camp went.
One of the tough parts about fighting amateurs in California is the weigh-in is done the same day as the fights, both for financial purposes of people not having to travel so much for no money, and also for making sure that people aren't trying to cut so much weight and keeping them healthy on fight day.
Yeah, it's a tough little science. You know, you got to be smart with your diet and nutrition, and, you know, it plays a factor in the fight. You know, it's not just about making the number, it's about being effective when you fight.
You don't have that same time frame to rehydrate.
No, you only get a couple hours. When a professional, you get a full day, sometimes 30 to 36 hours to rehydrate and get your fluids back in.
Well, here we go, round number 2. Stephanie Pogue in the blue corner, lethal Laura Salazar in the red.
Now we hear Salazar's corner saying, "Chop the leg," which means she wants some Muay Thai kicks to the outside of Pogue's leg. And she seems to be ready for it. She's almost checking before the kick is even there.
Yeah, for the limited experience of Stephanie Pogue, she really seems quite comfortable in the stand-up game.
Super composed, and, you know, you see the look in her eyes. She's not like blinking, she's not uncomfortable, she's focused. She's picking her shots and being very smart about what she does.
This isn't just Stephanie's debut as a fighter. She's only been training martial arts since 2011.
Super methodical, landed a great combination. Yes. Wow.
Oh, that is a huge spinning back fist from Laura Salazar.
You know, and after getting rocked like that, Pogue still looks composed. She can take a shot.
And now Laura's getting lighter on her feet. Now she's starting to throw a little bit of heat.
Now we have these girls firing. Like I said, my 2 favorite things, girls and fighting, and now we're having it. You want to have a little headlock, but she might give up her back. She's got to be careful.
A great takedown from Laura Salazar.
Yeah, she's doing a good job in somewhat of a scarf hold position, as jiu-jitsu people call it, or I call it a headlock position, coming from a wrestling background.
Looking almost for that case of Katami.
Hi, which is Japanese for yes.
You know, Laura didn't get off much in the first round, but you can see when she lets loose, there's a lot of power behind the small young woman.
Yeah, and we have to be, looks like we're going to have a little bit of a reversal. She has somewhat of a choke, but it's modified where she's straight up. I think she's going to get out of the choke just because of where her positioning is.
That neck, though, looking very uncomfortable from this angle.
Yeah, but she's within the guard. It's a really tough choke to pull off, and it's gone. But that being said, Laura Salazar won that round. She landed 2 amazing shots, nice spinning back fist, big overhand right, and got herself a takedown, ending a very, very tight choke to end the round.
And even those few right hands she threw once they made it to the ground had a lot of sting on them.
Yeah, I think we have ourselves a 1-1 fight right here if we're going to go by round. I think Pogue won the first round, and I think the second round clearly went to Salazar.
Don't forget, here in the amateurs, though, we do use that half-point system.
So it could be a little closer than depends on how. I say this round is a little wider than the first round was. This round might be a full point.
So overall in the fight, you might have a slight edge for Laura Salazar.
Yeah, they might have a half-point lead. You know, that being said, that leads up to a possible draw depending on who wins this round. Very interesting system with the half-point scoring system.
Very impressive, Stephanie Pogue, taking those really, really hard shots, maintaining composure. You can see in her corner right now, she's still very alert, still very focused. She's not mentally breaking from taking that damage. That might be from taking beatings from 4 older siblings for a whole time through her life.
Yeah, and playing basketball, she was probably elbows and, getting hit by the boards.
This is not her first time going through a tough outing as an athlete.
Let's see how she comes out this round.
Round number 3 of this 125-pound contest. And again, that big overhand right from Laura Salazar.
And what she's doing, she's going low to high. She's making Pogue look down, and the shot comes over the top. Let's see if she does a similar combination. She's throwing like a body jab and come with the overhand right.
You can see that feint from Laura Salazar.
See, there it is. She's trying like a jab, somewhat of a fake takedown to overhand right.
Laura's been very successful with those big single strikes. I'd love to see her set up some combinations.
Nice strikes by Stephanie. She's really good with the straight punches. I think that's her bread and butter for having those long arms. So throw those straight strikes down the middle. There it is again. Really nice right hand.
Stephanie definitely doing a good job of landing. But as we've seen before, that power of Laura can change a fight in just a moment.
But I would love to see Pogue throw some hooks or anything looping. I've yet to see her really throw anything that is not straight.
Nice inside leg kick from Laura Salazar.
Great right hand down the middle. Another right hand. Seems to have her a little hurt.
Pogue doing a good job of controlling the ring, though.
Now we have ourselves on the ground, trying to somewhat of a desperation takedown. We're going to see Stephanie on the back in a possible triangle position. And she has it locked up. Now what she needs to do is get some space, get her, push the shoulder through the crotch to make the triangle a little tighter. But if this ends right here, I think we have ourselves Pogue winning her debut very nicely. Great fight.
A lot of wonderful high energy action from these two young ladies.
You know, these amateur fights are such a tease to me because we watch these pro MMA fights and they're 15-minute fights. We only got to watch these girls 6 minutes fight each other.
I think this fight's going to come down to how do they see the difference in round number 3? How big is the gap scoring there? Because I think that Laura established a pretty good lead there after round number 2 with that half-point scoring system.
And, you know, there's a really good chance both girls' hands are going to get raised.
It's a distinctive possibility. I'd say majority draw.
Just because round 1, I'd say, goes to Pogue very tight. Round 2 to Salazar by a bigger margin, and round 3 to Pogue as well by slight margin. Depends on how they score those short right hands that Pogue was landing. Does it make a full point differential, or do they give that takedown by Salazar to make up the differential on that? So we'll see.
Very strange choices by Laura Salazar in that 3rd round. She found a lot of success with her striking, especially being creative in round number 2.
Yeah.
And then that sort of long-range desperation takedown there in the 3rd round.
That's what I think. If she does lose this fight, that's what lost the fight, is that desperation takedown. She could have backed up and reset herself, but she tried for a bad takedown and almost got caught in a triangle. If Pogue had better submission skills or was a little more aggressive with her triangle, Salazar could have got finished.
I'm really curious to see what happens once Pogue gets a little more snap on her strikes. She's got good length, a good understanding of distance. Once she can put some power behind those things, that could be a big game changer.
Yeah, I definitely see her. I'm sure since this is her first fight, the confidence and the jitters are there. So. But I'd like to see, and I'd like to see a short hook from her. A short left hook would be really nice to her game. That would really stop people from coming in on her and be a little, a new shot to get hit with.
It'd be great with someone with her length to open up with the kicks a little bit more as well.
Yeah, she seemed very boxer-like. More of a boxer BJJ type of fighter. No real kicks, even though she was looking to check them. I would like to see some head kicks or even some push kicks from such a tall fighter.
Remember, only a couple of years experience here for Stephanie Pogue. Started training Krav Maga, Jiu-Jitsu, and kickboxing in 2011. So a lot of room for growth. Now, 37 years old, a little late in the fight game, but Stephanie's quite an athlete.
Yeah.
Also nowhere near the oldest fighter on our card tonight.
No, who's the oldest?
Jens Grau.
How old is he?
42 going on 80, I'm not entirely sure. Jens Grau, I shouldn't say that, but if he ever listens to this fight, I'm going to get a fistful of fists.
He's got young muscles, though. He's a muscular dude.
That's one thing I do enjoy about the amateurs, is you get such a wide swath of competitors. It's not, professional fighting, there is a certain level of homogeneity to the who you're pulling your fighters from.
100%.
Whereas with the amateur ranks, you get some people who want to turn pro, some people who are lifelong martial artists want to test themselves, some people who just walked into a gym a year ago and went, you know what, maybe I'll fight somebody.
Yeah, and then that is what happens. You get the wide variety of guys that join an MMA gym to be fighters, or people that join and then they all of a sudden say, hey, I want to fight. You definitely get a wide variety, especially with the amateur MMA. But the great thing about these amateur MMA, you can get a match made with someone even rather than thrown in with some world beater.
Let's go for our official decision from the judges' scorecards with Salvador Arellano.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, after 3 rounds of action, we go to the judges' scorecard. First judge scores a fight, 29 to 28.5 for Salazar. Second judge scores a fight, 29 to 28 for Pogue. Third and final judge scores a fight, 29 to 28.5 for your winner by split decision. Out of the red corner, lethal Laura Salazar.
Thank you for tuning into the CAMO Top 10. Make sure you like us on Facebook, and any fighter who wants to be featured, make sure you reach out to us. From JTAN, Brandt Stebbins, thanks for having us here at Tapout LA today, and everybody else here at CAMO Top 10, happy holidays.